What's up, everybody? What's up, MGTOW? So, this is going to be me responding to Crimson Crusader's second part of his Comment Wars video, Comment Wars Part 2. Now, he starts off his video by pointing to the fact that I said that I wasn't going to argue the nuances and the differences between the crime of adult female rape and child rape, also known as pedophilia. And now, while, of course, people could be attracted to whatever they want, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about specifically pedophilia, the crime of having sex with children. Now, he's arguing that the fact that male adult rape or males raping adult females is a more violent crime than female pedophilia in the cases where a teacher is having sex with a student, and he's claiming that it's statutory rape, more or less. I think that there's more to it than to say that. Because in the case where a person is put in charge of a child or given authority over a child, they have a extreme responsibility to not have sex with that child, more than just some random person on the street. So in the case where just some random guy on the street meets an underage girl and convinces her to have sex with him, and the charge of statutory rape is filed, you could say that that is less of a crime than a man forcefully raping an adult female. But in the case of a teacher-student relationship where the teacher has authority over the child and the parents specifically put the child in the care of that other adult, hoping that that child would not have sex with that adult, I think that that crime is much more severe than your typical quote-unquote statutory rape case. But I think more to my point, I wasn't accusing anyone of supporting pedophilia. I think more to my point is just the fact that all rape is bad, and trying to argue which type of rape is more or less severe or more moral or less moral than the other is really just going down a bad road in the first place. Instead of, trying to present an argument defending female pedophiles that, well, their crime is less severe, I think that any type of assault on a person in any shape or form, whether it's sexual, physical, mental, coercive, is bad. And it's basically just as bad. It's just as wrong in the case. And sure, you can say that other factors, like if a person breaks into somebody's house and then rapes them or something like that. But again, you could say the same thing about a female teacher raping a male student because the parent didn't bring the student to the school to have sex with the teacher. And it is considered a crime in most Western countries for an of-age female to have sex with an underage male. It's a crime. And so getting off on it or getting much lighter sentence than what a male would get for that same crime is wrong. Which kind of leads into the second point here, in which he's trying to refute my claim that men get more charges and longer sentences for committing the same or similar crimes as women. And my claim is that you can take these statistics and see that the court is biased towards men. Now, he was asking for me to provide some statistics and some evidence for it, and I'll be linking several studies down below, which basically all the studies point to there being around a 60 to 65% disparity in gender sentencing. And so even if you take into account the differences in crimes that men commit and other factors like criminal history and other factors like that, just off the bat, you can see that that's a large gap. A 65% gap is a very large gap in sentencing. And then when you look at this study specifically called Estimating Gender Disparities in Federal Criminal Cases, you can see that in the study, they take into account and adjust for all of those factors that Crimson Crusader mentioned: criminal history, the severity of the crime, and things like that. So these people are comparing basically like for like crimes, and actually when they do that, the disparity gap widened to what they had originally thought when they were just looking at similar crimes. So when they actually adjusted for, disparities in the criminal record and all that type of stuff, it actually widened, and it's showing around a 60% disparity in gender sentencing. So, it's just very hard to, prove to people like this, because they'll just keep saying, oh, well, it's like you can't look at every single thing in the entire universe. We're looking at general statistics, and these are statistics taken from federal cases. So this is basically all the cases that happen in the United States federally. And then by looking at those cases, which is a big enough sample size, I think, to show that there is a disparity in gender sentencing. Now, whether you want to say it's due to bias or not, that doesn't matter. The disparity exists. And so therefore, men should take that into account when interacting with the justice system. Whether or not there's a bias or not in individual judges or individual lawyers and police and all these other things, it doesn't matter, because the disparity exists. And you can look at these statistics yourself and try to argue against them, but these are very scientifically done studies, and it seems to be widely accepted within the legal community and the criminal justice community that there is a disparity in gender sentencing. And if you're looking at the disparity, it seems that it's biased towards women. Women get less charges, less time for committing very similar crimes and having very similar criminal records to the men that do the same crimes and have the same records. So then, talking about dominance for the most part is a male trait, and we can get into the intricacies of how people's basal drives, basically your drives from the R complex of the brain, affect your mammalian brain and your prefrontal cortex when it comes to decision making and all the types of things that you do in your life. And yes, your prefrontal cortex does allow you to make certain choices, but still most of your drives and your base instincts and even why you think about the things that you think about come from the R complex, or the reptilian part of your brain, which is the most base survival instincts of your brain. Now, as I talked about in the other video and showed with the lions and things like that, that male dominance is at least in part a sexual trait or a sexual display or almost a necessity of being able to access sexual reproduction for most animals in the animal kingdom, in which the male is the physically dominant of a sexually dimorphic species. And for the most part, primates like monkeys and things like that are a tournament species. And the only reason why we do pair bonding is for social stability. There's really no other reason, because as you said in the other video too, that polygamy is bad for society because it creates jealousy between the women and also social unrest between men that find it harder to access females. So at least in Western society and more modern society, monogamous pair bonding was socially enforced to kind of enforce more social stability and give more men a chance to access sexual reproduction, and that in turn allows for more social development, because instead of men constantly competing for resources and for sexual access, they can actually work together and try to develop other things that are beneficial for society. Now, you're claiming that there's no evidence for dominance, there's no evidence for the fact that basically most of our day-to-day actions, besides the ones that are surrounding our basic survival needs like food, water, clothing, and shelter, are based around accessing sex or moving towards accessing sex. Now, if you look at most adult human activities that are outside of work, yes, a lot of those activities revolve around trying to access mates and access reproduction, or in the modern sense, just have access to sex. And beyond the basic survival needs drive, the sexual drive is probably like the second most strong drive that humans have. And you can try to argue me about that and tell me that I don't have any proof for that, but I'm not going to really play that game with you right now, because it's pretty obvious if you just look at society that people want to have sex. Adults want to have sex, and they're either looking for mates or they're looking for hookups or whatever. But to sit here and try to say that, oh, you got to really prove to me that men take actions in the real world to try to access sex. I just don't know what else I could say to prove it to you. I mean, if you can't kind of recognize that that's something that goes on in society, there's nothing I can say to you to prove that. But I mean, just look around, look at what's on TV, look at how marketing works, look at what men talk about in their free time, and look at the prevalence of the adult industry and how much money people invest in adult entertainment and dating and marriage and all these things, and then try to tell me that people's focus in life beyond survival needs and their career and things like that is not to have sex with people that they enjoy having sex with. I just don't see how you can miss that when you're looking at society, just from a general perspective. I mean, it's a pretty commonly known thing. Like, it doesn't take a scientist to figure out that people like having sex, and people spend a lot of their day trying to either access sex or do things that will increase their chances of attracting people from the opposite sex. I don't know how else to explain it to you. So your last point in this video is trying to refute my claims that education and IQ and income levels are somehow related to birth rates. Now, it's not a one-to-one thing, but in most Western countries, and at least in most English-speaking countries, there is a strong correlation between high education levels, high income levels, high IQ, and low birth rates. I'm not saying which one causes the other, but to say that low birth rates cause a high level of education doesn't make any sense. To say that low birth rates cause a high level of IQ doesn't make any sense either. You might be able to say that low birth rates cause a higher income, but then that doesn't correlate with the other two statistics, and having a higher level of education does correlate with having a higher income, and having a high IQ does correlate with having a higher level of education. And typically having a higher IQ is one of the causes for somebody to attain higher levels of education, and having higher levels of education sometimes does lead to somebody having a higher level of income. So while you can't say which one causes the other, I'm pretty sure that we can say that having low birth rates doesn't cause a higher level of education. And you can see from these statistics here, and I'll link below, that there is a correlation between having higher levels of education, higher levels of IQ, and a higher income with lower birth rates. And you're agreeing with me that, there are reasons why in the Western world that the birth rates are lower, and it has to do in part with people being at work more and having social obligations and other things. But you're really not including the fact that lower birth rates is a real problem for society. Because if you can't increase the birth rate of your society, then your society will go away. And another society will come up that has a different set of values and a different system. And typically those will be societies that are more conducive to females having a higher birth rate. So as much as having a high level of education and a higher income might be good for the individual person, and specifically the individual woman, it's bad overall for society, because then your society slowly diminishes and goes away. So I guess my question for you here is that which is really more beneficial to society? Having a bunch of highly educated, rich, childless women, or having a society that has a replacement level birth rate? And the second question is, if reducing female education and female income would cause an increase in birth rates and social stability, would you be okay with that? Or would you rather allow women to have higher education levels and higher income levels, and then have your society be reduced drastically and basically go away? So, because it seems like for the most part, you can't have both. And you're agreeing with me that, as people enter the workforce and have less time to have children, that there's some correlation there that the birth rate is going to decline. So you really can't have both at the same time. So do you want to have a society, or do you want to have a bunch of rich, childless women? I'm just trying to figure this out. So that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one, and have a good day, and go MGTOW.